raise a family. They have some of the same opportunities that me and my wife.
You agreed that we need to see them as a terrorist organization.
On a private cloud server, yes or no?
To love country, to love God, and to try to do the right thing.
Worked for the nation and the interests of the people. Welcome back to the Fresh Freedom Podcast, your podcast with the freedom-loving freshman members of Congress. I'm Eric Burleson from Missouri, and I'm joined by Josh Burkeen from Oklahoma, Eli Crane from Arizona, and our special guest, Michael Cloud from the great state of Texas. Welcome to the Fresh Freedom Podcast.
And I appreciate you acknowledging the great state of Texas. That was wonderful.
It's mandatory.
It is mandatory, and I've been trying to get the rest of Congress to understand that, but thank you.
Well, I think Texans nationally have been doing that ever since I was born. Probably long before I was born. You know, I mean, you guys are pretty proud of being Texans.
Of your state.
Yes.
I think they're big stuff.
And as I got older, I tend to agree with you.
Texas, he just reclassified Oklahoma as North
Texas's hat, Oklahoma. So to start it off, just kind of give us an idea, how in the world did you get here? Like, what's your background, and what caused you to have the crazy idea to run for Congress?
Yeah, well, I mean, exactly. You know, this wasn't on my radar when I was growing up. I remember my parents good citizens, but I don't even remember having a political sign in our yard growing up. You know, they would vote and try to live as Americans, and always grew up very proud of our country and those kind of things. My dad built nuclear attack submarines for part of my growing up. You know, so
really,
always around military. My grandparents served. You know, just typical American home. But this wasn't exactly like on the radar of things that happen, and so I went to college, came out of college, went to work at a church. I actually loved what I was doing, but
as a
pastor? I was on pastoral staff. I was the communications media director. We were young adult pastors for a while.
Wow.
It was a growing church, so your roles kind of shift and change.
That must be a big church to have a communications director job.
Well, it was it was a pretty large church, especially for a smaller community. But serving for a while on church, you just loved what we were doing, helping people every single day. But then my heart kept getting pulled for where I saw our country headed. And then just wanted to get involved. So I started to volunteer locally. That ended up leading to me becoming the county chair of the political party locally in our county, and did that for a few years. All volunteer work.
Local Democrat Party?
No, that would.
You just said local.
You're the one wearing blue.
It went well with the suit, man. Come on.
Wow.
I guess I got a little myself.
That's got to be a tough job, being the state party chair, right?
It was a county party.
Okay.
And then I got involved with Young Republicans, ended up being a liaison to our state party, got involved a little bit. All grassroots. And then somebody finally said, we think you should run for Congress. You're like, that sounds like an other people's kind of thing. But the short story is my wife and I prayed about it, and really we felt like it was something we were supposed to do. And, for my faith's really important to myself, my family, and it's one of those, if you think you're supposed to do it, you kind of don't have a choice, and so we ran. We had 4 elections across 8 months.
Really?
Yeah.
Why 4 elections?
We had a primary runoff, and then in that time the seat became vacant, and so we had a special election in between the runoff, in which we had a 9-way.
So it became
election.
So you replaced Ron Paul, right?
Ron Paul was my former congressman, but then the district got redistricted.
Okay.
So ended up having those 4 elections and ended up serving.
So you went from no office holding whatsoever to becoming a member of Congress.
Went from grassroots volunteer, to.
That's a pretty incredible step. It really is. And then the Freedom Caucus.
And then the Freedom Caucus, yeah.
What drew you into the Freedom Caucus? From...
He was lost, man. He just stumbled in. He stumbled in the wrong building.
It was the food.
What's going on here?
They had Chipotle.
I smell pizza.
Yeah.
I remember getting a call. I was on the campaign, and Mark Meadows and Jim Jordan had called me and kind of like, hey, what do you think of the Freedom Caucus? And I knew, my heart was aligned with what was going on, but I remember them, saying, hey, what do you think about the Freedom Caucus? think you'd be interested. And I'm kind of like, this asked him to get married on the first date. It's like, what does that mean and everything?
Right.
And they said, we're just looking for people who believe in the Constitution, who are willing to take tough stands when necessary to move this country in the right direction. And when I got here, it was awesome because there's a lot of conversations that were happening on the Hill, and we've all been to those meetings where.
What year, Michael, did you come in?
2018. Yeah.
So Meadows was somewhat recruiting you. He immediately, soon after, becomes chief of staff for President Trump. So.
Yeah, we served together for a little while,
Yeah.
and then he became chief of staff for President Trump. Left us here alone. No, no, did a great job, and so ended up in the Freedom Caucus. And what was awesome to me was you'd have you go to some meetings and there'd be the $50 steaks and talk about fundraising, and then you'd come here and it was pizza and we're trying to process things over the Constitution.
Yeah,
and you might even have disagreement on it, but it was always from what's the best thing for the country, what's the Constitution say, and where the conversation always started in the framework where the conversation moved around was exactly where it should be. And so, it's just awesome to be able to serve with people like that.
And a prayer.
And
prayer. Pretty consistent group to start off with a prayer, even though sometimes it's a very small, short prayer. Somebody's guilty of.
He didn't like my dinner prayer.
Well, it's
today.
interesting. It's interesting because you said something, Michael. You said, and this is a theme I've noticed up here. You and your wife felt like God was calling you, right? Mm-hmm. It reminds me of a big theme in that movie that just came out this last weekend, Sound of Freedom with Jim Caviezel that we went and saw. Yep. And if you guys haven't seen that movie, I highly suggest you go watch it or recommend it to a friend because it's
Ballard.
Ballard. I had a chance to visit with him. Actually, you and I were in the same room, and Jim Caviezel. Yeah. And there's kind of conversation taking place where he's maybe willing to come before the Homeland Security Committee with us, and so we'll see what happens with the schedule. I'm sure he's become a very big deal in short time frame. So, I hope I know Chairman Green's talked to him, so maybe he'll come before.
It was pretty awesome. It beat Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
It was impactful. We went with our family on 4th of July and took our teens, and it's pretty intense topic, but so good to see that. I mean, they handled it very well.
Yeah. It's a movie that you feel like you need to see, and you can't walk away without being changed.
Oh, exactly.
But it's also not a movie that I'm gonna add to my list of regular go-tos.
It's
like
not a fun movie because it's a true story.
It's not fun to watch.
It's like Passion of the Christ. Jim Caviezel, if you watch it one time and you're like, wow.
No, it's not going to be in there with Big Lebowski for me or Dodgeball. But it's something I think every Christian should watch. So, well, I appreciate your faith and the leadership that you have in that regard. Tell us about the other leadership aspect that you have within Freedom Caucus. You are one of our designees on appropriations. How did you get there? And now that you're there, tell us about the strategies, what goes into effect.
Right. Well, what Americans Saw at Home was kind of dubbed a speaker fight. That was really a 6-7 month process of us trying to change the rules. We knew very likely that we would have the majority coming into it. And so there was this conversation leading into this term about who are we going to be? We need to change the culture of this place. We need to change how this place operates. So much of what our job had become was perfunctory. No, there's a
word he used today that I had to look up. I'd heard it too many times.
So much of what we did was just, when you would go home and tell members, we have not been able to offer an amendment on the House floor on a bill for years, since I've been in Congress and years before that. I mean, that's stuff they would assume we'd had the authority to do and the ability to do. And so we needed a change at how this place works. And we're all, part of that. And so coming out of that, there was also an understanding with where we are in our conference. And it's a much better, healthier process to have all the voices on the front end than a bill designed in a closet somewhere, thrown in front. Then everybody asks, hey, we're voting on this.
And you either take it or you don't.
We need your vote on it, And so there was an understanding that we needed that to happen, and so somehow I got the short straw.
Because whenever they're talking about what committees do you want to be on, many people said, if you're conservative, you don't want to be on appropriations because
Yeah,
you'll
exactly.
take a lot of bad votes. But
Yeah.
given that you're not alone, has it changed the dynamic in appropriations?
It seems so. I mean, obviously, I wasn't on approps before, but I was really concerned about that. I was kind of like, if we can't just complain about the problem and say, well, there's no conservative voices on approps, but I don't want to be, you know what I mean? And so, it's kind of like, okay, I felt like a missionary to approps in a sense, but really it's been a good process and part of this kind of what I call rewriting the muscle memory of Congress in this term. So we're doing it kind of as a conference. It has some bumps along the road, but we're doing it in large part kind of rewriting how Congress works, but also rewriting how the Appropriations Committee works. And just to kind of explain one difference maybe, in the past we would talk about what a conservative win on a spending bill was, and that was kind of like, well, if we bring the levels from here to here, that's a conservative win on spending, and we accomplished something. And that's true, that's part of it, but we're funding a lot of evil. We're taking taxpayer dollars that's going through this government, and it's just going out all over the world to fund pure evil. And so just to think from approaching this from a policy standpoint, why don't we let that first cone be, let's go through this and just defund evil.
Michael, can you give our viewers just a couple examples off the top of when you say we're taking your taxpayer dollars and funding evil around the world?
Oh, yeah, literally we have funded drag shows in other countries. Yes. We fund, I remember one of the most eye-opening conversations I had was I'd been a member for about 3 months, and an ambassador was sitting in my office, comes in, shakes the hand, and I was like, I just want to thank you for the support your country gives to our country, and really appreciate it. And then we got to talk for a little while, and he said, let me take off my ambassador hat for a moment. He said, every dollar you send, he said, I'm a Christian, we have a Christian country. Every dollar you send to our country goes to undermine Christian values and family values in our country. And so right now...
Really? Because of all the strings that are attached to it?
The strings that are attached to it. And
right.
So if you look at what's going on in our State Department...
Is this South America?
I'm going to,
Right.
Yeah.
I've heard about this, that because
I've
the
heard
Biden
from
policy...
a few ambassadors, though, from across the world.
Because the Biden policy says you can't accept these funds unless you allow Planned Parenthood.
The strings, yes, exactly, and the strings that are attached to it. So imagine you're another country who's not as prosperous as we are, and you're looking at the choice between, okay, I don't want to embrace communism, but I have China who's willing to pay for roads and bridges, or U.S. who historically has been a free country that's promoted freedom, liberty, ideals that we want to embrace, but what we have, you got roads and bridges on this side, and let's fly the pride flag over here,
or the drag queen story hour, or the pride parades that are taking
Planned
place.
Parenthood, or those kind of things. And so that's the choice we're leaving a lot of countries these now from a foreign policy perspective. And so going through appropriations bills kind of with that mindset of not only and a lot of course, one of the big things we're working on right now is getting in transparency into it, because a lot of the nefarious spending is coming in the grant writing process. So the line item is very clean and nefarious, but then the person in a cubicle somewhere, the bureaucrat in an office who's actually saying $1 million goes here, $1 million goes there, is making a decision with very little transparency or accountability as to where that money goes. And for us, even as members of Congress, getting eyes on that, it's very, very difficult.
But it's also you're keeping eyes on
change that.
You're keeping eyes on where the Constitution has been violated. Mm-hmm. I mean, point to the place there where I think Madison said, point to the place in the Constitution where it gives us the ability to do benevolence. And Madison, I'm paraphrasing a Madison quote, but he said, point to it. Show me the place where we can be benevolent. And he's talking about the specified powers, so those 18 enumerated powers. And so, I mean, even money we're giving to other countries, point to some place in the Constitution where we have the authority to do that. So to have somebody that not only is coming at it from a biblical worldview, but also a constitutional worldview.
How about even a common sense point of view?
Common sense.
All that's true, but we can't even afford it. And this is one of the tough conversations I have to have sometimes in my district, with folks that want funding for infrastructure. And it's like, and yet we have $32 trillion in debt by January 2025. It'll be what, 36 trillion at least? And we're sending billions of dollars out the door to other countries to pay for their infrastructure, this, that, and the other thing. And Americans are like, what about our infrastructure? What about our security?
Exactly.
What about our economy? And I think that's one of the sickest things about this entire place, is that America First lens is not put in between everything that we look at.
Yeah, the common for 20 years, at least as far as from a distance, when I worked for Tom Coburn almost 20 years ago, I've never sat in a committee room and it was Barack Obama, who was the United States Senator. I'm just a staffer, and I'm sitting here, and Barack Obama was saying, well, it's just, talking about foreign spending. He said it's just 1% of our budget. We were at $3 trillion spend then. That was the annual budget. People say now it's just 1%. We have doubled. We are a $6.2 trillion spend country. So 1% is pretty sizable.
So we just got back from our 4th of July 2-week break.
You look more tan.
I've been doing a lot of landscaping in my front
Jumping off
yard.
lawnmower or four-wheelers too.
Yes. Did you like that video? Did you see that?
I sent you a text. I said, I hope you didn't hit your house. I saw you.
So-
I saw the four-wheeler, and I wanted to know where'd the four-wheeler go on
So
screen.
we'll have to show the video to you guys.
Plug.
Cue the video. American independence has given more people economic opportunity and liberty than any nation ever before. So for this 4th of July, let's celebrate. Shoot some fireworks. Or something else. Enjoy some great outdoor food. But most importantly, be unapologetically proud of the greatest, freest nation on earth.
You must have drank a lot of Bud Light before you made that.
Did you see it?
Yeah, I did.
What did you think?
It was interesting. It was good. I mean, I'm glad that you were being unconventional.
Dude, it was like Lone Ranger without the white horse. It was. You just came off that sucker.
In the video, it begins. I can't describe it. I can't describe it.
I can't describe it.
So, it's just America.
I mean,
it's like a video that just celebrates America. And the theme of it is,
think Olympian athlete.
when you've got all these crazy woke liberals who want to be ashamed of America and ashamed of this nation, it's like, are you kidding me? Yeah. We're the freest nation in the history of the planet. Like we're a nation where people sought opportunity and freedom. More people have economic opportunity than ever before because of the United States of America. Not just here, but we inspire other nations as well. So we shouldn't be ashamed of that. Let's celebrate it. So that's my video. And I unabashedly celebrate in the video.
How was your 4th of July?
It was good. I mean, I got to spend time with family, but I'll be honest, man. I struggle on days like the 4th of July. Like I struggle to celebrate when I see where we're at. I just, and maybe that's something wrong with me, but I feel like we don't have a lot of them left because of our foolishness, our stupidity, and our wickedness.
That's why you're here, though, right? To fight.
Yeah,
and
so the 4th of July for me is it's always a tough day, just because I feel like we're blowing it, we're destroying it, and because of that, this isn't gonna be the given that it should be.
Yeah, exactly.
For my kids and for your kids,
I have to say I had that thought too. I mean, from a perspective of the day, it was great. We went to a veterans thing that afternoon. That evening, we were in small town Cuero, Texas, celebrating its 150th anniversary as a city. I mean, Americana, the band playing patriotic tunes in the background. You're looking over the lake at the park. I mean, everybody's there waving their flags and everything. I mean, pure Americana. And, you're sitting there going, like, this couldn't be any more perfect for a 4th of July. But, I'm also sitting by my children going, I hope they have this too, and the assumptions that we grew up with, and as far as what America is and means, and will be as far as a light to the world going forward. They can't be taken for granted. They're not assumptions anymore, and to assume that they are would be to surmise our demise in a sense, and so we've got to, as Ronald Reagan often said, every generation has to fight for it themselves, and so that's.
The shining city on a hill can't advance darkness. I mean, that's you to be a shining city on the hill, you have to advance light.
And Michael, that might be one of the reasons that Texas finally has to secede. I mean,
You know, I was actually
Texas would be the state.
I mean, it would be, you know, and we might all have to go live there, dude. I hope that's not the case.
I was actually at an event with the governor, and he was starting to say if Texas was its own state, would be the 10th largest economy. But all he got out was Texas was its own state. And in the back of the room, it was like, "Amen." Just like, where did that come from?
So the other thing that happened since we went on 4th of July break is that apparently there's cocaine in the White House.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, how'd that get
Yeah.
there? That's weird, man.
That's wild. It must have just helicoptered in, or a drone dropped it or something.
You just can't make this stuff up. I mean, if you took this administration right here and you wrote it and you put it in like a Netflix series and you pitched it around Hollywood, they'd be like, no way, nobody would believe that. It's just, I mean, you just can't make this stuff up. It's just like every single week, it's just like one scandal.
Yeah.
And not just one scandal, but one like eye-opening,
Depravity.
jaw-dropping scandal at a time.
Yeah, because like you had the transgender person flashing their boobs.
Yes.
And then this, like all like just within
And
weeks
cocaine
of
in
each
the White
other.
House. Yeah.
Cocaine in the White House. And what's funny about the cocaine is it's like the magic bullet from the JFK assassination. It has traveled.
It was here, then it was there.
It grew legs. Like they found it first. It was in the library, right, with the
Blue
candlestick. And then it was in the parlor, right? No, it was in the. But then they said it was in a well-trafficked area, frequently trafficked area, and then it ended up. I think the Secret Service says that it was outside of the ready room, that it was literally outside, which is not an area that most staff go to.
Who
were
else
they
was
getting
at
ready
the White
for?
House?
Yeah.
Who was there?
Yeah.
Was there a usual suspect there?
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing. You watch the media and like what we had a COVID origins hearing today, and there were some scientists who helped publish the proximal origins thing who, basically said that the lab leak theory couldn't be, and it's one of those things where Americans are sitting at home going, that seems like the most plausible theory to me. I mean, it's on this like it's like the media's like it could not be this, and Americans are going, I don't know, it seems the most plausible thing to me.
Yeah, you mean
therefore it can't be that
The virus didn't come from the Wuhan Institute of Virology and Coronavirus. Just so happens that's the region. Yeah, the Occam's razor.
It's crazy.
So okay. Rapid fire questions, okay? Just for everybody. It's in honor of 4th of July. Who's your favorite founding father? Start with Josh.
Washington, because of his ability to take his ambition and just get rid of it. And Washington was willing to walk away and had to be convinced to take a second term and only for love of his country. And he was a very moral man. If pride parades right in the executive order was just the opposite of what he did. If you look at how he dealt with sexual immorality when he was commander in chief, and Washington is the one who made the famous quote of all the dispositions and habits which lead to political prosperity, religion and morality are indispensable supports. In vain would the man claim the tribute of patriotism who would labor to subvert those great pillars of human happiness. Both reason and experience forbid us to expect that national morality will prevail in exclusion of religious principle. The founding father of our country, which the city is named after, he was saying you can't be associated with the word patriot if you would to take away our biblical underpinning, our biblical virtue.
Okay, Michael, rapid fire.
Rapid
Not
rapid fire.
Not
well,
Josh fire.
I can do this rapidly because he said like 90% of what I would have said, only much more eloquently. So, I mean, for me, it's easy Washington for that same reason, that same perspective. I feel like he had more of an understanding than many. When you really look at his life, calling him the father of our country has almost become a cliche. But when you really look at what was going on in that time, and really the fact that so much rested on him as an individual for us really to truly have a nation, and there were many founding fathers but unlike anyone else, I mean, he was such a unique individual in ensuring that this country was put on the right path. Just an amazing figure in that regard.
My answer would be the same as far as the individual, but maybe for a different reason. Because when you look at Washington, and the fact that he led men into battle, not just led men into battle, but he led men into battle against a much more superior trained force. Yeah. And as somebody who's gone into battle, I've gone into battle with the most elite unit where we usually had more firepower than our opponents, and even then, you can get in sketchy situations. But the fact that he did it, in such a small, untrained force when they weren't supposed to win, just shows me the amount of courage and perseverance he had.
Have you seen the Appeal to Heaven flags?
Yeah, I've got one outside my office.
I have one outside my office.
What is it?
Appeal to Heaven. So, according to history,
Washington's cruisers.
He actually paid for 2, 3, maybe 4
He
ships out of his
six,
own personal. Was it 6?
I think it was.
Out of his own personal, because he was one of the wealthiest men in America at the time, and he hoisted that flag and appealed to heaven, basically saying, facing the greatest world empire, God without you, God without you, this ship is sunk. So the flag that would be outside their offices was his flag that he flew and appealed to heaven.
The story is pretty interesting. I don't know, but it's that Washington was making reference to the fact that the King of England had marked the white pine trees in America as his property.
That's right.
So imagine you have people that came all the way over here, and then you're told, hey, whatever land you work, you don't even own it. The king still owns it.
Yeah.
And so they literally would mark
Mm-hmm.
them for the king. And there was a lumberjack that was caught in western Pennsylvania harvesting white pines, and the British garrison went to him, or some troops went. The story is that he beat them up. And that happened right before the Boston Massacre and all of these other events. And that, along with the phrase, the appeal to heaven, which comes from John Locke's Second Treatise on Government, because Locke is basically saying when your country has wronged you, when your king has wronged you, who can you appeal to? There's no higher authority but God. You can only appeal to heaven. And so that was a great, to your point, Washington was very philosophical to be making a reference to John Locke and still inspiring people with the white pine tree, right?
Yeah.
But my favorite founding father is George Mason. I'm more and more becoming a friend. What's the grin?
Convention of States, I think, maybe potentially.
Well, the Bill of Rights. Yeah. The Bill of Rights. Without him, we would not have the Second Amendment. We wouldn't have, the First Amendment. We wouldn't have the Bill of Rights. And I think that he was the contrarian in the room when all those guys were in the room and they were creating this big, masterful government. And you can imagine, he was the guy who was raising his hand saying, no, guys, I disagree. I don't trust this government we're creating. And I'm glad that we had somebody like him in the room.
Yeah. He also put forth Article 5, which the Convention of States movement is surrounding. And
Josh, rapid fire. What's your favorite 4th of July food?
Hamburger.
Cheeseburger?
You said rapid fire. I gave you a quick answer, and you come back to me. And he comes back to me.
In South Texas, we actually have enchiladas, so
wow.
I'll say that just to not say hamburgers, which would have been a top choice as well.
Wow, enchiladas. That doesn't sound patriotic.
Hot dog all the way, man.
Hot dog.
For me, it's a bratwurst. Actually, I think that the 4th of July merits having a hot dog and a hamburger on the same day. The same meal.
Oh, absolutely.
Definitely.
I don't know you can dismount a four-wheeler that fast if you have both.
Yeah, that's right.
Slow you down, man.
Well,
plug for your video.
Michael, thanks for joining us. We hope you'll come back and that we didn't.
I'll think about it.
I don't know if this podcast will be around long enough for you to come back, dude.
Well, nobody watches it anyway.
Hi, Mom.
And with that, that's the last that we have for this fresh episode. Thank you again, Michael, for joining us. And if you like the show, hopefully you do, for the few of you that are watching, please like and subscribe and share it with everyone that you know on social media. And with that, we will see you next time on the Fresh Freedom Podcast.